And I'll mute all. Okay, so good morning, all. This week, our portion is Vayakhel, and it's a special Shabbat as well, the first of special Shabbatot between the second month of Adar and Passover. So Shabbat Shekalim. So there's one other person's coming in, just a sec. Okay. Oh, and another coming in. Okay, we started a moment ago, but we'll start again. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Recording is on, and I was just saying that this week our portion is Vayakhel, and it's a special Shabbat, one of the special Shabbatot between the second month of Adar and Passover, Shabbat Shekalim. So I actually want to look at the Haftorah for our Torah study today instead of the Torah portion itself. So just a note about the calendar. First, Vayakhel, and the last portion in Exodus, the one that comes after, Pekudei, are usually combined into one lengthy portion because in a regular year, those two portions are combined because it's a reiteration of Truma and Tetzaveh and the beginning of Kitisa. Truma, Tetzaveh, Kitisa described how the Mishkan should be built and how the vestments should be made. Vayakhel Pekudei describe how all that was done. So in a leap year, when an extra 4 weeks are added to the calendar, you need extra Torah portions in order to fill out the calendar. So mostly those portions that are usually doubled are separated and read on their own. So that's the case this year with the portion Vayakhel, and next week we'll do Pekudei. And like I said, Shekalim, the first of the special Shabbatot for between Adar and Passover, is all those special Shabbatot are all about preparation, that seasonal preparation, and mainly preparation for Passover. So it is. So Shabbat Shekalim is kind of like the when tax season begins, because it is a reminder of what we read at the beginning of last week's portion, that a half shekel tax is supposed to be taken from all the people of Israel in the desert for the building of the Mishkan. And that half shekel tax, everybody has to give, no matter their wealth. Everybody between the age of 20 and 50, adult male, has to give that half shekel, and that was then instituted to be an annual tax, a temple maintenance tax. So that was always announced at the beginning of Adar. So when it's a leap year and we have 2 months of Adar, Shekalim is read as we prepare for the second month of Adar. So it just turns out, the way the calendar works, that this coming Shabbat, Saturday night through Monday, is Rosh Chodesh. So it's always associated with Rosh Chodesh. Sometimes Shabbat is Rosh Chodesh, and when that happens, that it's Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, and Shabbat Shekalim, that's one of a couple of times a year that you could have 3 Torah scrolls taken out of the ark. So this year, because Rosh Chodesh is Saturday night, the Torah scroll, we only have 2 Torah scrolls, one for the portion Vayakhel, the regular weekly Torah portion, and then one rolled for that special Shabbat Shekalim reading. So I want us to turn to page 1277 in the Eitz Chaim, or if you don't have Eitz Chaim, any Chumash, just look in the table of contents for the Haftarah for Shekalim. So it's page 1277. So we'll notice that we're told that Ashkenazim begin the Haftarah a little bit further down the page. Sephardim start at the top of the page. Ashkenazim start at the further in, which is unusual. Sephardim usually have a shorter Haftarah. When there is an option that Sephardi and Ashkenazi have different versions of the Haftarah, usually the Sephardim do the shorter one, but this time the Ashkenazim do the shorter one. And the Ashkenazim, let's say this, the context for this is Second Book of Kings, and both books of Kings, after the dedication of the temple in Jerusalem by King Solomon, from that point on, so about chapter 8 or so of the first book of Kings, after that to the very end of Second Kings, it's all about the people of Israel neglecting God, offering sacrifices, and the kings themselves neglecting God as well. So, and you have either the prophets described in the books of Kings, or some Kohanim, some priests, who try to get the people of Israel to return, who try to get the kings to eradicate idolatry to varying degrees of success. So, and then the prophets themselves say that this whole period of time, from after King Solomon until the end, is reason why the Assyrians were able to conquer the northern kingdom of Israel and exile the 10 tribes to Assyria, which meant that we were lost forever. And the Babylonians were able to conquer the southern kingdom of Israel, known as Judah, and exile Judah and Benjamin and the tribe of Levi to Babylonia, which, because of Babylonian exile policy, enabling exiles to maintain their identity while in exile, it's thanks to the Babylonians that we're still around today. So the end of chapter 11 here on 1277 describes the transition from the one and only queen of Israel during this time between Solomon and the exile to Babylonia, Queen Atalia. She's the only queen of Israel. There were other wives of kings, like Jezebel, the wife of King Ahab in northern Israel, but she was not the authority. She did things that were terrible, but King Ahab was still the authority at that time. Queen Atalia was the authority of the southern kingdom. It was a kind of a rebellious period. She was not descended from King David, but then Atalia, that there was a rebellion against her, so that the dynasty could return to the dynasty of King David. And then a boy is found from the dynasty that was hidden away, Yehoash, and he's 7 years old, and he's brought by the high priest Jehoiada to become the king, since they got rid of Atalia. Okay, so that palace intrigue and the rebellion that was going on in Israel at the time is the backdrop for this. So since he's 7 years old, he then becomes like a steward of the high priest. So essentially the high priest is running affairs until Yehoash gets older. So let's see how this gets connected then to Shabbat Shekalim, this Shabbat of the half shekel tax. So we'll start the middle of 1277. I don't think I said the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech olam, sher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So Ben Sheva Shanim Yehoash b'malcho. So we're doing the Ashkenazi Haftarah, not Sephardim. So Yehoash was 7 years old when he began his reign or became king. Bishnat Sheva leYehu Malach Yehoash, ve'arba'im shana Malach b'Yerushalayim, v'shem imo Tzivia miBe'er Shava. So during the 7th year of the reign of Yehu was the king of the northern kingdom. So during the 7th year of Yehu, Yehoash became king, and he reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem, and his mother was Tzivia from Be'er Sheva. Okay, so it doesn't give us more in terms of then how this Tzivia is related to a descendant of David. Right? But suffice it to say that this Yehoash fit the bill. 3. Vaya'as Yehoash hayashar be'enei Adonai kol yamav asher horahu Yehoyada hakohen. And Yehoash did what was right, or what was honest, or what literally what was straight. But it says here pleasing. I'm not sure yashar would be necessarily pleasing. He did what was right in the eyes of God all of his days, based on what Yehoyada the Kohen taught him. Okay, that's how, or instructed him. Okay, so that's how Yehoash did right in God's eyes, because he was taught well by Yehoyada the Kohen. The relationship between Kohen and king is a fraught one throughout the history of Israel during the times of the kings. So there was always, and then when you throw in a prophet as well, that relationship between Kohen, that is the worship service in Jerusalem at the temple, the king, the military political leader, and the prophet, who's supposed to be the spiritual advisor to both Kohen and king. So the relationship between the three of them is rarely a good one. So the prophet, so the king might have a particular strategy that the prophet may not like. For instance, fighting the Babylonians. So the king of the southern kingdom of Israel at that time wanted to fight the Babylonians, because who as a king would not want to fight for survival? And Jeremiah says, no, God has sent the Babylonians to punish us and to send us into exile. We're supposed to capitulate to the Babylonians. The king of Judah says that's crazy, and throws Jeremiah into jail for suggesting such a strategy. Okay, so that's just one example of a relationship gone sour. So here is what the narrator says is a positive relationship. The priest training the king so that the king's what the king does is pleasing to God. Okay. 4. Rak habamot lo saru, od ha'am mizabachim umekatrim babamot. So what he did was pleasing to God. However, what he didn't do is still, the fact that it's put here makes it seem like it's condoned. He did not get rid of the altars. Well, it says here the shrines. Um, it's a shrine at which sacrifices were offered. And Jehoash did not get rid of these shrines that the people were still using to offer sacrifices and to offer up incense. So whether these were personal shrines that people might have had in their homes or in their villages, or whether they were more centralized, maybe there were a few of them around the land of Israel, Jehoash wasn't able to get rid of those, right? Because once the temple is built in Jerusalem, that's the only place that sacrifices are supposed to be brought. People were not allowed anymore to have their own shrines and altars. So the idea that the people of Israel were influenced by outside culture, and the Canaanites and the Philistines always were sacrificing to their idols. So if the Israelites are living amongst them, or say it better, the Canaanites and the Philistines were living among the Israelites, and the Israelites had never completely followed through on the commandment in the Torah to annihilate the indigenous population, the fact that the Canaanites and Philistines are still there is the downfall of Israel, in that their idolatry, it seeps into Israelite culture, both in the northern kingdom and in the southern kingdom. Okay, and so it's not until after we're exiled to Babylonia that that we do away with idolatry. But or we could say idolatry is still part and parcel of Jewish society and also greater society. It's just that our idols don't take concrete form. We worship other things, status, wealth, things like that. And one could argue in a spiritual context that having a life in which we're pursuing those kinds of things is a life of idolatry. Okay, so in other words, thinking that maybe this part of the Bible doesn't have relevance for us today, it doesn't take that much to realize that idolatry is a metaphor for other things as well, and that the argument the prophets preaching against idolatry is still relevant for us today. Okay, and the fact that still the king did what was good in the sight of God, while also not eradicating the shrines, is just a testament to how it's like at the beginning of Genesis, when God, after the flood, allows human beings to eat meat, is giving in to human nature. Before the flood, apparently, human beings were supposed to be vegetarian, right? We were a vegetarian in the Garden of Eden. But after that, we were not anymore. And that's God recognizing that human nature is such that we can't go without slaughtering animals to consume them. So this could be another idea. We need with God knows that these things are part of society, and hopes for the best with good leaders to make sure most of the people, as many of the people as possible, are following God's ways. Okay, verse 5. Vayomer Yehoash el hakohanim kol kesef hakodashim asher yuva beit Adonai kesef over ish kesef nafshot erko kol kesef asher ya'aleh alev ish lehavi beit Adonai. So this is the connection with Shabbat Shekalim, this verse right here. Yehoash said to the Kohanim, all the money, current money, brought into the house of the Lord as sacred donations, right? Kesef Kodashim, holy money, sacred donations. Any money a person, I would say a person, may pay as the money equivalent of persons, or any other money that a person may be minded to bring to the house of the Lord, 6, Yikhu lahem hakohanim ish me'et makaro, vehem yechazku et bedek habayit, l'chol asher yamatzeh sham badek. Let the priests receive it, each from his benefactor. They in turn shall make repairs on the house wherever damage may be found. All right, so he's setting up essentially a reserve fund, like what we have at Sharei Tefillah, that can be, that when the board authorizes it, we can take money out of it for repairs in the building, upkeep and maintenance. Okay, so Bedek Habayit is house maintenance. Right? And this, he's coming up with a system, Yehoash is, of how to do this through sacred donations, repairs to the temple in Jerusalem itself. Remember that sacrifices were being offered in the temple, but the Kohanim were being lenient. Not lenient isn't the word. The Kohanim were being heretical by allowing sometimes idolatry to enter into the temple. So that had to be cleaned out. And there were other things that, just because of the corruption of the priesthood, keeping the money for themselves instead of using this holy money for holy purposes, even fixing the building, that has been that hadn't been, that was the case, the corruption, and Yehoash is trying to change that. 7, Vayahi, so that's when he's 7 years old. Vayahi bishnat esrim v'shalosh shana lemelech Yehoash lo chizku hakohanim et bedek habayit. So for 16 years now, in the 23rd year of the reign of Yehoash, so it's 16 years after we're first introduced to him, the Kohanim did not follow through on the repair of the house of the temple in Jerusalem. So the Yehoash told them, this is what you're supposed to do. The Kohanim said, oh, okay, sure. And then they just forgot about it. And Yehoash forgot about it too. He said, hey, maybe he would have said to them, hey, don't forget, repairs to the house. Oh, yeah, don't worry, we'll take care of it. And so 16 years go by until finally, verse 8, Vayikra HaMelech Yehoash LeYehoyada HaKohen VeLaKohanim Vayomer Alehem Madua Einchem Mechazkim Et Bedek HaBayit V'ata Al Tikchu Kesef Me'et Makarechem Ki LeVedek HaBayit Titnuhu. So King Yehoash summoned the priest Yehoyada and the other priests and said to them, why have you not kept the house in repair? And now do not accept money from your benefactors anymore, but have it donated for the repair of the house. Right? You're not allowed to keep your money anymore, and I'm gonna be on top of it now because we need to repair the house. Vayeotu hakohanim levilti kachat kesef me'et ha'am ulevilti chazek et bedek habayit. The priests agreed that they would neither accept money from the people nor make repairs on the house. How they readily agreed, I don't know. Did Yehoash come with a sword and say, you better do this now or on pain of death? It doesn't say here, but how else could he convince the Kohanim if not, or maybe he'd said, I'll kick you out and we'll get some other Kohen family to get in here to run the business. So, Vayikach Yehoyada, verse 10, Aron Echad, Vayikach Yehoyada HaKohen, Aron Echad, Vayikov Chor Bedalto, Vayitenoto Eitzel HaMizbeach, Miyamin, Bevo Ish Beit Adonai, Venatnu Shama HaKohanim Shomrei HaSaf, Et Kol HaKesef HaMuva Beit Adonai. So Yehoyada the Kohen took a chest, an armoire, some kind of chest, an aron, or an aron in modern Hebrew would be a closet, but it could be like a furniture piece that could be used in that way, kind of like a cabinet. And he drilled a hole in its door, and he put it next to the altar on its right side as you're looking at it, as people are coming in to the house of God, and deposited there all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. Or the priestly guards watched over it as people were depositing money in it, right? So people brought their money to the temple, kind of, again, related to Shabbat Shekalim. And this way, this is a place like the Pushka. The Pushka is next to the altar. And you had guards who were there to make sure that the money was safe. 11, Vayihi kir otam, ki rav hakesef ba'aron, Vaya'al sofer hamelech v'hakohen agadol vayatsuru vayimnu et hakesef hanimtza beit Adonai. So when they saw that the money was filling up in the cabinet, then the royal scribe and the high priest would come up and put the money accumulated in the house of the Lord into bags, and they would count it. Vayatsuru, so tzror, a bundle. So they made a bundle of it, put it and brought it up, and so that they would then count this money. Okay, it's like I don't know. You go to a supermarket and you take your bag of coins and put it in the coin machine, and it kind of counts your money for you, and it gives you bills. That makes it a little bit easier to carry around bills instead of money. So here, this is just what they did. They would put the money in bags and count the money. 12, v'natnu et hakesef hametukan al yedei osei hamlacha hamufkadim beit Adonai vayotziuhu lecharashei ha'etz v'labonim ha'osim beit Adonai. Then they would deliver the money that was weighed out to the overseers of the work, right? So there was like a temple maintenance crew or a grounds crew. And so the money went to the head of the grounds crew so that they could pay, the head could pay the workers, they could pay the carpenters and the laborers who worked on the house of the Lord. 13, Vela Godrim Olachotzve Ha'even, Veliknot Eitzim, Va'avnei Machzev, Lachazek et Bedek Abayit, et Bedek Beit Adonai, Ulachol Asher Yetzei Al Abayit Lechozka. And the masons, so it went to the carpenters, the laborers, the masons, the stone cutters. They also paid for wood and for quarried stone with which to make the repairs on the house of the Lord, and for every other expenditure that had to be made in repairing the house. Okay, there was enough money then to get this work done. 14, Ach, lo yeaseh beit Adonai sipot kesef mizamrot mizrakot chatzotrot kol kali zahav uchli chasef mina kesef amuva beit Adonai. However, no silver bowls and no snuffers, basins or trumpets, no vessels of gold or silver were made at the house of the Lord from the money brought into the house of the Lord. So the vessels themselves that needed to be used were not updated or made from this money. The money was only for repairs to the building itself or the structure of the building, not for the actual vessels in the temple. Ki la'osei hamlacha yitnuhu v'chizkuvo at Beit Adonai. 15, this was given only to the overseers of the work for the repair of the house of the Lord. 16, velo yechashvu et anashim asher yitnu et hakesef al yadam latet la'osei hamlacha ki ve'emunah heim osim. No check was kept on the men to whom the money was delivered to pay the workers, for they dealt honestly. How we know that? We don't know, but this is just the narrator's comment to tell us that there wasn't somebody keeping a log of what money went in and then what expenditure was used for, because that log wasn't necessary, because the overseer and the workers were working honestly. Kesef asham v'chesef chataot Lo yuva beit Adonai la kohanim yihiyu. Money brought as a guilt offering or as a purification offering was not deposited in the house of the Lord. It went to the priests. So people were coming to sacrifice, and they didn't have an animal to bring. They would have a monetary equivalent, and that monetary equivalent went to the Kohanim, and that would be their offering. So we might ask then, this is the Haftarah, not exactly stunning spiritual poetry that we might expect from a Haftarah. Rather, it is the nuts and bolts of running the temple in Jerusalem as Yehoash fixed it and made sure that it was dedicated to God. So kind of it could be boring, almost as boring as the Torah portion itself, with a list of how exactly the Mishkan was being built, what the length of the wood was, what kind of wood was being used, etc., etc. So the one idea we could say is that the Torah and religious ideals don't necessarily only have to be in the clouds. We shouldn't have that just spiritual notions isn't what religion's about. Religion is about the nuts and bolts too. And the nuts and bolts have to be made in a spiritual way with a dedicated holy purpose and designed in a spiritual way. So if it's one thing to say we need to have a sacrificial system, it's another thing to say how it's going to work. And the Haftarah and the Torah portion remind us of how the system worked. And all the details of how it works is as holy as the description of needing a house for God is itself. So the ultimate for this is what we'll read in a couple of weeks in the portion Vayikra, or the portion Tzav, that is that the ashes, after the sacrifice is finished burning on the altar, the ashes have to be taken away. So there's a commandment about trash removal. And if trash removal is in the Torah and is elevated to a holy status, then everything we do, from the spiritual to the most mundane, becomes spiritual, because everything we do has to be with the thought that we're doing it for God, or that God is guiding us to live as holy a life as possible, whether that life, that part of the life is in the synagogue, or that part of the life is at home in private. That all the details of everything that we do then become holy. So, any questions or comments about the Haftarah? So that's what I wanted to look at today. So I hope everybody has a good rest of the day today. And Paul, welcome back from Texas. Hope you had a nice visit. And a belated happy birthday to Cheryl. And take care, everybody.
Everybody, Yashikala.